There are stories in the Americas, most tribes from New Hampshire over to California talk about 6 fingers, red-haired giants that were 9, 10, 12 feet tall.
There's over 500 tribes just in the United States alone. One thing that is prevalent in all the stories is stories of giants.
The Shoshone, the Bannock, and the Paiute Indians all got together and formed one army. Chased about 60 giants into the cave down at Lovelock, and then they piled brush in front of the cave and they lit it on fire.
The Native Americans didn't have anything nice to say about the red-haired giants.
They were cannibalistic, they were sexually perverse, sadistic.
Bite your head off, drink all the blood out of your body.
And then throw the body down, like popping a top off a Coca-Cola.
My brother's 6'6", 6'7". This thing was a lot bigger than my brother.
We followed her downstairs into the basement, and then she opened this cabinet, and there were the bones.
You can see the face rock in front of us. That was the place where the library, the books, the Dead Sea Scrolls, that among them we found the famous book of Enoch.
You have these beings who belong in the spiritual realm choosing to trespass and enter the natural realm in an illegal way.
Members of the divine realm were allowed to come through a portal from one dimension into our dimension.
They're at what they call Gilgal Rephaim, which translates loosely as Wheel of the Giants. So the reason why all this matters is because Bashan, which also means the land of the serpent, was the place where the giant Og reigned during the days of Moses. And Og's name can mean circle, and we're sitting here in a pile of 42,000 tons of stone circles that there's no way you can appreciate it unless you're high up in the sky.
Early Israelites identified it as the work of giants. Therefore, it seems sufficient to say that in its ancient context, Circle of the Giants is a better translation of Gilgal Raphaim.
I'm not like this, and I'm soaking up this energy. There's a very special energy here.
Could some of these wonders be the metaphorical handprints of the giants spoken of in Genesis?
You are able to access the different spiritual realms through the manipulation of energy. And so the belief is that you're doing so by increasing the vibration in your different energy bodies.
This is Plaza de Armas in Cusco, Peru. This is the region where the strongest evidence for the presence of the Watchers and the Nephilim on Earth can be found.
And this is probably the largest megalithic wall in the world. The Inca found this site, so they decided to build here. When the Spanish first arrived, they were completely blown away. And they said, "Did you build this?" And the Inca said, "No, this was here when we got here." This is the biggest, 125 tons.
Are you capable of meeting with the Watchers, the Guardians?
In our culture, from the 5th level of consciousness and higher, it is like having an afternoon meeting.
Rabbit ears on a cat figure, which represents the Son of God, Horus. And you have the Tree of Life with the snake, so it's one of the chaos creatures coming out or through the Tree of Life. What the Son of God is doing is he is crushing the head of the serpent and then slicing it off. What it says in the hieroglyphs above here, he will strike your heel, but you will crush his head. This pyramid is 2.3 million blocks, the smallest of which is 2.5 tons. The biggest ones, the bigger ones, are up to 15 tons.
These nodules we also saw in Peru. And how can there be nodules here and the same exact type of architecture literally halfway across the world in Peru? Very separate civilizations, same technology. Why?
Such a great conversation. You guys dig that, by the way? That was pretty cool, getting to just hang out with everybody. My dear friend, remind me your name. Your name again? Yes. Cheryl. She sat next to me the entire lunchtime and I didn't catch her name. That's good, nice guy, you know. She asked me, what was was there one thing that stood out? And I'm assuming, did you all see the trailer this morning? You did, right? Yeah. Okay. What was a highlight moment of the making of the documentary? And I said, well, funny, oddly enough, that's my topic. I'm going to share I'm going to share 3 of the locations that we filmed at that were big eye-openers for me. Now, I know that when people get into a genre, they become, voracious about it. They know everything about it. So there's one thing that I want to quickly address. I want you to know I am not dogmatic about anything that's on this film, other than the fact that Jesus saves. That's really the only thing that I'm dogmatic. It's the only hill that I will die on. I have worked for the last 24 years, until recently, for Inspiration Ministries and for their documentary division, which is Answer Quest Entertainment. And we set out to make a film that would definitely cover all the things that we want to talk about, all the realities, the truth, the spiritual warfare, and all those things. But we wanted to present it in such a manner that it wasn't just palatable to us. And by us, I mean believers, And we did everything we could to, and I want you to hear my heart in this, to de-Sunday schoolize it, if that makes sense. Not to water it down, not to hide the message, but to present it in such a manner that we would not, scare off the unchurched immediately. So we had just recently spent about 2.5 years on a comprehensive project on the end times. It was called Apocalypsis, the Final Warning. And we are actually in the process of making the 5th installment of that. So hopefully you guys will hear from it in the months to come. As a matter of fact, I'm trying really, really hard to rope Derek Gilbert into it. And so pray for me that the Lord will give me the right words and the right wisdom to make a presentation and a pitch to him. When we finished Apocalypsis, which was very tasking on us from the standpoint of our resources as a network and our manpower and all that stuff, we felt very, very happy, very like we reached a finish line. And my CEO jokingly said, "So what's next?" And I wanted to say sleep, But instead what came out of my mouth was Nephilim. I didn't even know where that came from, I think it was because I had a conversation with a friend of mine about the Nephilim, very, very superficially, not deep or anything. And when I said Nephilim, I mean, he lit up. It was right around Christmas time. He lit up and he ran out of the room and he came back. Hang on a second, You all right? So he came back waving a book at me, and it was Doug Van Dorn's Angels, Sons of the Gods. And he put it in my hand and he said, "Read this." And he sent me home with homework, me and my big mouth. So I took it fell asleep probably. Is it sleeping? Okay. Yeah, sorry. So he sends me home with homework. So I devoured the book and it was fantastic. One of the first things that I saw was, one of the things that he talks about is the Gilgal Rephaim, which is the Wheel of the Giants in northern Israel in the Golan Heights. And for a second, I kind of got offended, and I'm going to tell you why I got offended. My assignment with the ministry, with INSP, for the last almost 25 years, has been Israel, has been all things Israel. I started going to Israel in the year 2000 was my first trip to Israel, and I stopped counting at about 36 times in. And that was probably in the early 20 teens, I've been so many, and I love it. And every time it's like coming home. It's amazing. It's a blessing. One of the biggest blessings of my life and my career is to be able to go to Israel so many times. So I kind of felt offended because I'm thinking to myself, if there is a big attraction, a site in Israel, I know about it, buddy. And I've never heard of no Wheel of Giants. Well, there is a Wheel of Giants, and I didn't know about it. Because a lot of times what happens is, the Israeli Board of Tourism Christian tourism specifically, is such a big part of their income, part of their, it's a moneymaker for the economy. So if there is a new find, a new archaeological dig that's going to pique our interest, or the Catholics, or even, believe it or not, even the Muslims, they will invest their resources in that because it's going to be the new attraction at the theme park that is known Israeli tourism. So When it's more things like this, they're like, yeah, that's pretty cool. We'll get to it when we get to it. But Doug Van Dorn's approach to it and his the things that he had to say about the Wheel of Giant was just absolutely captivating, and I was completely intrigued. So I put that on the top of my list. If we go to Israel, this is where we're going to go. So I met Doug Van Dorn. I went and when I do a documentary, what I do is immerse myself in the subject matter, and when I get to interview the first person, I will do a gigantic, long interview where I ask just about every question that I can think of, right? Then I'll go home and I'll digest that for a couple of months and really, really sink into the answers. And then I do what's called, what I call, jokingly, my questions Bible on the subject matter. Every question that I could probably ask to anybody that I interview. So after doing that, I said, man, it's time. Let's do this. Let's shoot some video. So that was my first target was the Wheel of the Giants. When I started looking at the map, I saw something that kind of scared me a little bit. This is the road. This is the main. It'd be like the equivalent of a state road, or not quite an interstate. And this over here is Syria. See? You see that right there? So because I didn't want to depend on GPS, I made myself a note on a paper map. Syria, don't go here. And we didn't go, But we went there, and it was just an unbelievable experience. Believe it or not, Israel is such a captive. How many people have gone to Israel? Okay, so it's just. I don't like using the word magical, but it's so captivating. You never see the scriptures the same way again. So anyway, I want to roll you guys this clip of a video. It's a couple of minutes long. It is a piece of the documentary. And by the way, let me just say one thing, because several of you guys have asked me. We do have it available on demand, it's just angelsandgiants.com. I'll only say it one time. Please support the ministry and buy the DVDs here, but if you want to tell your friends about it, angelsandgiants.com, you can buy it or rent it. So anyway, let me share this with you guys, and then we'll talk a little bit about it.
This megalithic marvel, colloquially called the Wheel of Giants, is said to be approximately 6,000 years old. Adam's familiarity with the Golan Heights will be vital in locating the exact location of the wheel. Our destination is located at a relatively short distance from the scenic area of Mount Hermon in the easternmost parts of the Golan Heights, uncomfortably close to the border with Syria, where rogue militants of ISIS and Hezbollah hide and operate. In the middle of a region littered with live minefields from Israel's modern defenses, as well as conflicts past.
We are looking north, and you can see the heap of stones over there, and I think that is here.
Upon arriving at the Gilgal Rephaim, it quickly becomes evident that this mysterious place was a massive undertaking for whomever it was that built it. One of the most amazing parts of this place, it can only be truly appreciated for what it is from high in the air.
So, every vernal equinox, if you have to hang out for a day or two.
So we're in northern Israel, near the border of Syria, in the Golan Heights, in what to the casual eye looks like a pile of stones, a field of stones, but it's much more than that, isn't it, Doug?
Now, this is one of the most significant places I can think of. We're in an old term for it would be Bashan, which is the place of the serpent, and we're at what they call Gilgal Rephaim, which translates loosely as Wheel of the Giants. So the reason why all this matters is because Bashan, which also means the land of the serpent, was the place where the giant Og reigned during the days of Moses, when Moses killed the man. And Og's name can mean circle, and we're sitting here in a pile of 42,000 tons of stone circles that there's no way you can appreciate it unless you're high up in the sky.
In this modern age, the region is still rich with archaeological mysteries and ancient advanced inhabitants who date back to the Bronze Age, and in some cases, earlier. This is where our journey begins, in northern Israel on the Golan Heights. Could some of these wonders be the metaphorical handprints of the giants spoken of in Genesis 6.
The Wheel of Giants is estimated to be between 5,500 and 6,000 years old, and it is made almost completely of a black volcanic rock called basalt. This stone is plentiful in this region, as the entire plateau is in fact volcanic. When seen from the air, the stones form 5 circles that are roughly 500 feet or 150 meters in diameter, and encircle what most experts agree is an ancient burial chamber about 5 meters long. The rings themselves are connected by rocks forming an almost maze-like design. The stones used in building this mysterious place vary in size from 100 kilograms to over 5 tons.
They're all past it. These are big rocks. These are huge.
The center of the mound is between 6 and 8 feet in height, or 2.5 meters.
I think I'm sitting here. I live here. I'm sitting here for what, an hour and a half, and I'm not like this, and I'm soaking up this energy. There's a very special energy here that I just can't explain. And I think that was part of the intention of, this place was built with a very deep and powerful intention, and that's very clear. And I'm still picking up on it. It's intense.
Here is an entire room clearly structured and built to be
right. This is where
tomb of some
This is where they uncovered the remains that are older than Abraham.
We enter the inner part of what limited research on this place has concluded is in fact the burial chamber. The inside of the tomb measures approximately 4 meters from the entrance to the open part of the chamber, begging the question, who was important enough to have been buried here thousands of years ago, and were others buried here along the way? One popular theory is that perhaps this could have been the final resting place of King Og, an ancient king mentioned in the book of Deuteronomy, king of the land of Bashan, and last surviving member of the post-diluvial tribe of giants known as the Rephaim. Og was one of many kings that stood in the way of the Israelites, who, having left Egypt under Moses' leadership, were finally capturing their promised land, and as such, had to be permanently dealt with. The scriptures say that Og's bed was 9 cubits in length, meaning that his body was likely approximately 12 feet long. The biblical book of Deuteronomy details the account of the demise of Og.
Okay, so again, like I said, in the spirit of not being dogmatic about anything, I want you guys to keep an ear out for the things that Derek Gilbert has to say about this wheel. It may not have been a burial chamber. The dimensions are still the same, but it's still an amazing, amazing place. I want to point something out. The gentleman with the Jewish guy with the blue shirt, he's a writer for Israel 360. 360 or 360, right? 365. I'm sorry. Yes, Israel 365. His name is Adam Berkowitz. A great guy. He is a really good ally to believers. So much so that he's been accused of being an undercover missionary, and so he constantly, every now and then, he has to flare up and say something. I'm offended by the Christians. Just to keep his street cred. So, but he says. There's a very special, what do you say, a special energy here. And there really was. And obviously we know it's not, that sounds really new age, an energy or whatever, but you could feel it is very much a spiritual location. You can feel, if you're, and I'm not trying to pass myself off as super spiritual, but you can, as believers, we can feel when we're in a place that is spiritually active. I'm going to move on because time is flying here. Excuse me. Okay, so a few months after the release of Angels, Sons of the God, Doug Van Dorn, he's been credited to this. He was the first one to realize that slightly north, in the direction towards Mount Hermon, there is a gigantic serpentine mound right north of the wheel. And what's incredible is that it is confirmed that it is an absolutely burial area. It's in the necropolis area. So we took a flight over it. It's just very, very, very interesting when you start to think about all the things that Derek was talking about. And by the way, did you speak on the valley of the valley of death this morning? You didn't. Okay. So I'm not going to get ahead of you. But just the whole entire area, there is a lot of. It is a gigantic necropolis. You have all the dolmens and everything. So it's, again, visit Israel if you have a chance to do it, and make sure that your tour guide knows about this place. I am going to move on to the next section here. Okay. Set that. When you cross the ocean, you come to the New World, as it were. There is a lot of available history, a lot of available documentation about what the early people that came to the colonizers, the conquistadors, if you will, found when they came to America in terms of stories that line up with the Nephilim, with giants. Amerigo Vespucci. How many of you remember him from history class? Yeah, Amerigo, from which we get the name America. He wrote to the king, and he said, hey, we found a whole island of them. Not very well known, but check it out. Here it goes.
The entries from his writing state, we found a path in which we walked nearly 2 leagues inland and came to a village of about 12 houses in which there were only 7 women, who were so large that there was not one among them who was not a span and a half taller than myself. When they saw us, they were very much frightened, and the principal one among them, who was certainly a discreet woman, led us by signs into a house and had refreshments prepared for us. We saw such large women that we were about determining to carry off 2 young ones, about 15 years of age, and make a present of them to this king, as they were, without doubt, creatures whose stature was above that of common men. While we were debating this subject, 36 men entered the house where we were drinking. They were of such large stature that each one was taller when upon his knees than I when standing erect. In fact, they were the stature of giants in their size and in the proportion of their bodies, which corresponded well with their height.
Had anybody heard that story before? Yeah. It's funny what academia likes to keep suppressed and buried, isn't it? So there is something that's really, really interesting. There is a huge legacy of just about every Native American tribe in their folklore has mentions of giants by name. So here's a little list. I don't know if you guys can see that. Sorry, but there's a lot of them. It's not 1 or 2. They have the vast majority of them have story of giants, which makes you start thinking, where's all this coming from? I want to tell you a little bit about a particular young lady by the name of Sarah Winnemucca. Anybody familiar with her? Sarah Winnemucca was the first published Native American woman. She wrote her memoirs in a book called Life with the Paiutes. She was the princess of the Paiute tribe, the Paiute Indians. And in her book, she speaks about a huge war that happened as a result of the giants who would constantly attack their villages, and they would continuously just, sorry, you guys are seeing it. Let me rewind that for you guys, sorry. She would, these giants would constantly attack the villages, and they were cannibals, and they would take kids, and finally they'd had it. So 3 Indian nations united and banded, and they fought the giants, and they cornered them in this cave, which is called Lovelock Cave is the name of the place. And if you're ever going to visit this place, I'm going to tell you right now, trust your car. Make sure your car works, and make sure that you have something other than, make sure your satellite phone works too, because there is no coverage whatsoever. In the story, there was a standoff. They ran them into the cave, and then they set the cave ablaze. And they kept them in there, would not let them out. And they just kept throwing fire. They found a way to just absolutely kill them. They killed them all in the cave, as the story goes. Well, what's really interesting is when you go in the cave is completely covered in soot. I mean, the entire thing. Well, that's easy, right? Because anybody can go in there and light a fire and create soot. Problem is, this is completely covered. The soot is covered under about a 1/4 inch of molten limestone. The fire was so strong and so hard. When it happened, because the sun is there, you can see it right there. You can see how it's kind of crystallized. So if you touch this, you run your hand across it, normally, your barbecue grill or whatever, you'd get or your chimney, your fireplace, you'd get a black hand. Well, that won't happen here because it's literally crystallized. So it's pretty amazing the congruence with the actual story. There are a couple of gentlemen, M.K. Davis and Don Monroe. These guys are big aficionados of the story of Lovelock Cave, and so Don Monroe is credited with being, well, there's a bigger shot of the cave. You can see it right there. You see, I mean, we're talking about a cave about the size of this room. It's just gigantic. A few years ago, Don Monroe went in there, and he found a gigantic handprint on the wall. Let me show you how big he took a relationship shot. That's how big the handprint is. All right? Now, a few years later, he went back to check on it, and look what had happened. Somebody came in and tore it down. Somebody came in and completely chiseled it out of the wall. Gone. Now, the rest of the site is there, but the handprint is gone. Yeah. Okay, I want to show you guys the actual story of Lovelock Cave. So sorry. There we go.
They weren't there, and we were a little upset. So we looked for the person working there, and we could only find this one woman, and she was about 84 years old at the time. And so we asked her what happened to all the bones of the giants, and she said one person had complained, and so the display had to come down. And it was no longer, the public was not allowed to see the bones anymore. I asked her, I says, how about if I give a small donation of some cash? Do you think we could see the bones then? And she goes, well, I think that might be able to be arranged. I put some money, everything I had, in this little plexiglass box, a donation box. When the coast was clear, she came to us and she said, follow me downstairs into the basement. And there was a little office down there, and then she opened this cabinet up. There were the bones. And immediately I knew the jawbone didn't look like a normal human jawbone. It was bigger. There was a little plaster cast there too, to show how big a normal human jawbone was compared to this jawbone, which was quite a bit bigger.
In 1912, two archaeologists, Llewellyn L. Lau.
Stay tuned for part 2 of Rudy Landa's Angels and Giants.